Good morning. We continue our Impossible sermon series during this season of Advent, and today we look at Hope Made Possible. And we're still in the book of Isaiah. We move over to the 11th chapter today. But before we get to the scripture, one of the themes that we deal with here is that of being overwhelmed. When I worked for Xerox, this time between Thanksgiving and Christmas was my least favorite time of the year, and I can honestly say that I never really got to enjoy the season of Advent because of that. And the reason was that all of our salespeople got paid on commission, and we were coming up on the end of the year, and so there were year-end bonuses not only for the salespeople but for their bosses. And so there was this big push to install equipment that they'd had all year to get installed, but we got to get it installed before December 31st. And it was so bad that the manager I worked for would not even let more than one person take vacation during the period, the last 2 weeks of December, which was some of the prime time that I wanted to be off, but it wasn't possible.
Not in season.
I just wanted to be off to get out from underneath all of the chaos. But the world that we live in increasingly leads to that being overwhelmed or feeling overwhelmed, and that there's no hope, that this is just the way things are. And that's what the prophet Isaiah is writing for here. And so let's turn to the scripture. A shoot will grow up from the stump of Jesse, a branch will sprout from his roots. The Lord's Spirit will rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of planning and strength, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. He will delight in fearing the Lord. He won't judge by appearances nor decide by hearsay. He will judge the needy with righteousness and decide with equity for those who suffer in the land. He will strike the violent with the rod of his mouth. By the breath of his lips he will kill the wicked. Righteousness will be the belt around his hips of faithfulness, the belt around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the young goat. The calf with the young lion will feed together, and the little child will lead them. The cow will bear, and the bear will graze. Their young will lie down together, and a lion will eat straw like an ox. A nursing child will play over the snake's hole. Toddlers will reach right over the serpent's den. They won't harm or destroy anywhere on my holy mountain. The earth will surely be filled with the knowledge of the Lord, just as the water covers the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations will seek him out, and his dwelling will be glorious. I mentioned last week that we were taught at Duke Divinity School not to read Christ into the Old Testament scriptures. That even when the prophets are writing about someone, as the prophet Isaiah is writing here, there was someone in their mind when they were putting these words together. They had in mind a vision of who this was pointing to. And in this case, they didn't have that vision of Christ. And if you think back to the monarchy of the the Hebrew people, it was this roller coaster. You got a good king, and it seems to be he's followed by a bad king. Good king, bad king. And it's just a roller coaster that just kept on perpetuating. One of the good kings, I mentioned last week that there were 5 kings during the prophet's reign. I wasn't really clear when I mentioned that those 5 kings are during the prophet Isaiah, who the book is named after. In other words, the first 39 chapters. This is a period leading up to and the start of the exile by the Assyrian overtake of the kingdoms. And so in this time leading up, and these times of despair when the bad kings are in power and everything is going to pot, there was one of the bright stars during that period was Josiah. Josiah ascended into the kingdom because his father was assassinated. I believe he was around 6 years old when he became king. He brought reforms into being. A remnant, not a remnant, a forgotten scroll that turned out, or scholars think was Deuteronomy, was found and brought to the king and read to him. And even at that young age, he recognized that there was wisdom there and started bringing about the reforms and bringing the people back into a right relationship with God. Whether or not that's Isaiah's vision, we don't know. But what we do know is that Jesus Christ does fit that mold. And the things that are laid out here are a part of the Messiahship, the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And I can't remember how far back we talked about creation, and that Jesus was there. That was when we were talking about Gnosticism. That Jesus was there with God and was God. So he was there for creation. In this passage of Scripture, we have creation as it existed, as it had deteriorated up until this time, being turned back around. And the reordering of creation is: the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and bear shall graze, the young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. If you've ever scrolled down through YouTube videos, and I guess this is true in Facebook, although I've never been on Facebook, that you see unusual videos of things unusual. And one of the things that I've noticed is some videos of two animals that are living in harmony that is unusual. Most often it's a big muscular dog and a little bitty kitten, and that the dog has adopted the kitten as one of its own. In one case, the dog had seemingly adopted the infant in the household as its offspring, and that led to some perilous moments as people were trying to minister to the child or take care of the child there. But all that is to say that this reordering of creation may not be as far-fetched as it seems, that the foundation is there for that. The other, one of the other significant things here is the sprout from the stump of Jesse. Two things there. Hardwood trees will regrow. You can cut it off and you wait, and there's going to be some green sprouts that are going to come back up. You have to continually keep cutting those sprouts off in order for it to die. Case in point, the American chestnut trees died out due to a blight 60, 70, 80 years ago. Been a long time. And yet today, there are chestnut sprouts from these chestnut stumps and roots that continue to sprout in the forest. And it's gotten to the point where some of these regenerated chestnuts are starting to survive, that they have immunity to the blight and are starting to thrive in the forest there. So the image of this rejuvenation off the stump is one that people would recognize. Why Jesse? Well, Jesse was the father of David. And David was the start of, even though Saul was the first king, David was the first king in the order that God wanted a king to be. As God said, David was a man after his own heart. That's the way he described David. And so the image here is that a king's going to be raised up who will be a good king, as David was a good king. The image would not have, the people would not have failed to make the connection that David was also a superb military leader. And so they would make that connection again with the kingship and the military leadership that would give them superiority over the people around them. Jesse, this lineage to David, when you go to the Gospel of Matthew, there is a genealogy that is included at the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, that sometimes, if you don't understand why it's there, it may seem severely out of place. But it's there for one reason, and that reason is to show you the connection between Joseph, David, Jesus' earthly father, and David, the king, the man after God's own heart. That there is an ancestry link that connects them together. And so this and other scriptures that talk about in the line of David that a king shall to rise up again are seeing that connection there. And Matthew, writing to Jewish Christians, would want them to see that and make that connection there. So what does this say to us today? What hope can we bring or have from this in our world today? How does it encourage us?
Are you asking a question or?
I'm posing that question. If you've got an answer, I'll be glad to hear it.
Well, I think it encourages us because it talks about what the world is going to be like when Jesus comes again, and it makes you realize that when God created the world, it was perfect. Everything was perfect, and nobody argued with anybody, and there were no gangs and things like that. Nothing was wrong. And that's the way it's going to be again.
I think man has to decide to keep God and Jesus foremost and don't get involved in all the extracurricular stuff that goes on around notable holidays, whether it be Easter, Christmas, whatever. It's so much stuff now that's secular that takes your attention away from your relationship with God and your fellow man. It's all caught up into commercialization, I guess you could call it, of, you know, who's got the more lights or got the most decorations or how many gifts you have under the tree and all that kind of stuff. I see a lot of the focus now going to, you know, try to feed the homeless or get them off the street when it's really cold, open up warming shelters. The attention is going back to trying to help fellow man that's less fortunate, like it was back in Jesus' day, that God said you're going to have the poor and uh, medically challenged, or whatever you want to call it, the sick with you at all times. But we have to focus to see he's challenging us to help take care of your fellow man. Y'all, you're my hands and feet and eyes and ears of what he wants done. You know, he can say, don't even have to say the word to have it done. But through us, we have the hands on and can portray his compassion and love to others by the actions that we take and what we focus on.
There's always hope. There's always the promise that the day of the Lord, that better day, will come through our faith. One other point that I wanted to make here that I found in some commentary, and I'll just read this rather than try to summarize it. Unlike his ancient Near Eastern contemporaries, however, the Davidic ruler of Isaiah 11 does not hunt lions. Rather, he mysteriously remakes them, and he does so in a way that utterly eliminates predatory violence from the food chain. For Isaiah 11, these are the fruits of the just and righteous reign of David's descendants. In the summary words of verse 10, they will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. For years I used to focus on the peace that we looked at last Sunday, but I think in the world that we live in today, this word of hope and encouragement probably there's probably more of a need for that, I think, in the world, to let people know that there is hope, that no matter how dire things may be, that because of what God has done in and through Jesus Christ, that there is hope, and that kingdom that will be established. Well, we'll see where Pastor Dawn goes with this in a few minutes, and we trust that you'll be joining us, and may God's blessings be upon you.